Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about the 10th commandment of egoless code. So let's get into it. So the 10th commandment is be nice to your coders but mean to the code, or critique code but not programmers. And what that basically means is that you should be brutally honest about bad software, but you should never ever accuse a programmer for being stupid or dumb or something like that. And I think this is, once again, like the red thread, which is very fitting because the name is egoless programming, or this piece of literature that all this is based on is quite frankly that. The red thread is that if you want to be able to stay humble enough to get good results in any environment that you find yourself within IT, you need to understand that people are people, and everybody there is trying their best to produce something useful. Now, if you accept the fact that everybody's trying their best to do something well, and you understand that, as with the previous commandment, you are not your code, and if you understand that you need to detach yourself emotionally from the work that you do and understand that it's up for review. It's not an attack on you personally if you write bad software. It's the person who is saying that you have to improve something is trying to produce the best code possible. Like, that's the end goal. The goal is not for you to have like an emotional teddy bear and feel like you're the best coder in the world. The goal is to get the best results possible, and you are just an instrument of achieving that goal. And many other people apart from you could also achieve that goal. It doesn't matter who writes the code. That's, I think, one of the most healthy ways of looking at it. When you can get to a point where you don't really care who wrote the code, if it was you or somebody else, as long as the results are there, then you're in the perfect spot. Like, that's exactly where you want to be. You're just the mouthpiece for the universe producing these ones and zeros. That's what you are. And when we think about the interaction between you and your coworkers, this mindset to understand that, like, when you criticize code, that your focus is on the code and not the coworker, I think that's a really good thing. You should always try to remember to be nice in your wording, but you should never let things slide, if that makes sense. There are certain situations where I see people where things slide, where it shouldn't really slide, but it's for a different reason, especially when it comes to me. You might have had a really long day, or you might have had tons and tons of stuff to do, or there's a really good long pull request, or you might have a story that's been going back and forth into code review and testing and so forth for a few times. And then you refactor it over and over until it works, and then you notice in the code review some small little thing that could have been nicer, and then you just kind of go, I don't have the energy to comment on this, because then we have to do this whole song and dance all over again, so I'll just let that slide. Ideally, you shouldn't do that, but it does happen. What you should never do, on the other hand, is to allow something that is blatantly bad to go through. And the reason why this happens is usually either because you are dealing with a coworker, for me the most common reason is actually you're a junior, but it's a tandem type of thing, where you're a junior developer, you're dealing with a senior coworker, and they do something that's really bad, and you're afraid to cause tension because you're afraid that they will get upset with you. You're afraid that you will lose your job. You're afraid that there will be some negative repercussion from you saying that this is bad software to someone who's more experienced, so you just kind of fold. But the thing is, communicating that there's an issue with code doesn't have to be in the format of, hey, you wrote some really bad stuff. Use your wording. Be a communicator. What you can say is, like, just state it, put a comment there. If, let's say, for the sake of argument, that you're this junior coworker, well, put a comment and say, I'm unclear about how this works. In my mind, or like from the way that I understand this problem, this is how we should do this. but you're doing it this way. Why are you doing it this way? Pose it as a question, because a question is in this context not an attack on someone. It's not an attack on the person. You're trying to clarify what the code is supposed to do, and that is usually something that goes over well, even with the, well, there are some exceptions, but usually even the most bitter senior software developers or the most elitist philosophers of software developers are often very open to explain their genius idea or like why they did this instead of that, because ego, usually. And you should never let bad code get into the code base. You should always try to mention it, but I'm warning you a little bit here, because this commandment, if you apply it incorrectly, it will be so damaging to you. If you are a know-it-all person who just never lets up, who just continues to say, oh, we should name this variable better, we should format this line better, or we should, like every single little thing that you can imagine. Because there are I see that there are two types of people when we do code reviews. You have people who have 2 comments on like 100 files, and then you have people who have 50 or 100 comments on 1 file. Like, some people have tons of stuff to comment on, and some people have less things to comment on. And you need to figure out, and this comes back to the whole communication, talking to people, getting to know your coworkers, and communicating in a way where they understand that there is no attack here. Like, you're just trying to get the code to be as good as it can be, and it's a discussion. A code review is a discussion. It's not you telling them, do this or do that. You can always have an open dialogue about it, but it's important that you both act in good faith. So what I want you to take away from this is that the commandment that you should be harsh on bad code but not on programmers is a very good perspective to have, because you have to remember that you're never in a situation where there are developers, ideally at the very least, who want to produce bad code. Everybody wants to write good code. It's just that we have a difference of opinion on how to do that. Or sometimes you know more than the other person, or vice versa. The reason the code is bad is not because the person wanted it to be bad. It is because of circumstances. And if you just talk about it and address the code as bad code without being emotionally attached to it, you can resolve the issue, and you will both learn from it. This is the best thing that can possibly happen. What you want to avoid is a situation, however, where you are perceived as being this know-it-all person who just gets in everybody's face and tries to micromanage absolutely everything about everything. And that's a balancing act. You need to figure out where you should always address really severe issues, but some issues, maybe you can let them slide. Or you can talk or find another way where you can find a comfortable format for resolving any conflicts that might occur, because you're always trying to address every single little thing about code. It all comes down to communication. I have seen people who are really nitpicky about every single little detail, still make it feel like everything is fine between them and the coworkers, as long as there's an open dialogue about the whole thing. Have a great day.